All right, good morning, everybody. How's it going? How's it hanging? How's it swinging? I hope everybody's doing good. Today I have Raul Hevia and Ammon Bundy from the Bundy Ranch, Bunkerville. He's also the gentleman who helped out the Hammonds when they were unlawfully convicted for terrorism for starting prescribed fires. He also was acquitted of taking over the Malheur Wildlife Preserve, and the jury acquitted him. The reason they are here today is to talk about this system thing they got going. It's called people's rights. It's like a neighbor defending neighbor system. We're gonna talk about that, and then we're gonna talk about other stuff too. Hopefully, welcome Raul and Mr. Ammon Bundy to John Felix channel.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Can you
Thank you.
can you guys hear me well?
Yes, we can. I can hear you fine, John.
Now let me ask this to the people watching if they can hear it. Can you guys hear? Please say yes or no, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so Raul, you reached out to me. I don't know if it was social media or what, but you reached out to me. You said you wanted to talk to me, so I called you. We had a nice conversation. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm the son of a Cuban family that fled the island of Cuba because my dad was marked to be executed by the Castro regime, and they had to flee. They had been working on counter-revolutionary activity there in Cuba to kill Castro, and he went to jail twice, slipped through the cracks, and finally had to escape the island because he was going to be executed. And so I was born in Puerto Rico, and when I was 36 years old, moved to Utah, and ended up here in southern Utah, close to the Bundy Ranch that's in Bunkerville, Nevada, just across the border, because I live close to the border with Arizona and close to Nevada. And so when all that happened with the Bunkerville standoff, I was watching what was going on over the internet, and that's how I got to meet Ammon Bundy. Now, I met the Bundy family, and I saw everything that happened. I went to a few court cases and bail hearings, and anyways, I followed everything that happened during 2014 and 2017 at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. And so, fast forward a few years, I went to the state of Florida. I lived there for 3.5 years, and when all the COVID stuff started happening, my friends were getting arrested for trespassing on the beach. And I almost got arrested 3 times as well for defying the orders. And I saw what Ammon was doing in Idaho, because now he lives in Idaho, and so I needed to get in touch with him. And I called him and I said, "Hey, we're getting killed over here. We need help." And he says, "Well, let's get Florida in the People's Rights Network, because this is how you're going to shore up with your neighbors and be able to resist, because the power is in the numbers. When you have a lot of people around you within one voice and protesting and defying the orders of the government, when they're unlawful, then you have more power than if you do it all alone by yourself." And so that's when I called Ammon, and he helped set Florida up in people's rights. And that's the story.
The People's Rights Network. So the People's Rights Network, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. It's a group of people who get together. It's almost like a freedom force.
So let me explain a little bit, John.
Yes, please, Mr. Bundy.
Probably one of the
easiest way for people to understand the People's Right Network is basically a neighborhood watch on steroids.
Okay.
What it does is it provides the local people tools in which they can effectively communicate and unite with each other. It's not a hierarchy. It's not even really an organization, if you will. It's more of it's just a network. And it provides the tools for someone to text, right, to 80123. And then they go through a little quick process where they select basically the area that they live in. And then they are connected with their neighbors who have also joined.
How are they connected? How are they connected?
Well, they're connected a couple different ways, several different ways. We have a texting system. We also have an emailing portion of it, phone, and we're working on a ham radio side of it. And basically it works once you text right 80123 and you filled in the information, which we ask as little as we need. We only need a small amount of information, basically name, of course we have your phone number because you're texting in, email if you choose, and the area you live in. And then there's area assistants that are chosen in each area, 3 to 5 people, and they're kind of the gatekeepers of the information. And so, like, if there's an issue happening, like, let's say your family is under attack with TPS or something like that, well, you can call on these area assistants, and these area assistants will send out an alert to all the people in your area to act in whatever way, they feel is appropriate to protect your rights. On the other hand, if somebody else is needing your help, you may get a message from the area assistant saying, hey, your neighbor needs your help. And so it allows you to respond. And you've been able to respond within minutes, on some things. And we've made a huge impact in many different states. I'll give you one example. Washington, I don't know if you heard the story, but there was a new mother and father went to the hospital, first time having a baby. The mother was tested for COVID. She came back negative. She had the baby, and I guess they tested her again, or they tested her right before she delivered, and she tested positive, but they didn't tell her. As soon as the baby was born, they took the baby from the mother and father and would not let them have the baby. And they said that the mother and father was going to have to discharge from the hospital, go home for 14 days until they could get a negative test, and then wait another 10 days, and then they could come back and get their baby.
So they can wait 24 days to get their newborn child back.
24 days to get their and here, this was a nursing mother, all the things that a brand new baby needs. Not to mention, it's just a terrible violation of rights.
Absolutely.
And basically, the hospital and the state combined have basically claimed that they have a right to do this.
Where they get this jurisdiction and where they get this right from? We didn't give it to them.
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, that's something that we probably should talk about in detail. Just kind of to finish the success. Basically, we sent an alert out, or the area assistants in that area sent an alert out, and this network went spreading across the state of Washington and into Idaho, and hundreds of people showed up within just minutes, and then thousands of people were on their way. And when and hundreds of people, or even probably thousands of people, were calling the hospital, calling the Department of Health, and literally within 2 hours, the hospital completely turned itself around, blamed it on the Washington Department of Disease Control, and discharged the parents with the baby.
So this is a really good story, and I don't know how clear you're coming through, so I'm just going to summarize. A couple had a baby. They tested her twice, the first time negative for COVID, the second time positive. They wanted to keep her baby for 2 weeks while they separated them from their baby, and then another 10 days. So 24 days in total. And this couple was a member of this Freedom Force Network. People's Rights Network. Sorry.
They actually weren't, but a friend
So a friend of this couple who's being hemmed up at the hospital is part of people. Tell me the name again. I'm so sorry.
People's right.
People's Rights Network. So they sent out a notice from this People's Rights Network, and hundreds showed up, thousands were on their way, and they were flooding the phones. And within 2 hours, they said they had a right to steal your baby. To here, please take your baby.
Yeah, exactly. They completely turned around and they blamed it on the Washington, Department of Disease Control, even though we know that wasn't really the case.
Yeah, they blamed the dictator. They blamed the dictator, and they were just following orders, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And because the success is that people were informed quickly, they were informed correctly, and they acted immediately, and it defended these rights of this new parent.
And no bureaucrats showed up at their house or gunmen or anything?
No. They were able to go home. And
so they got the message, basically, that those people, if you're to try anything with them, you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people backing them up.
That's exactly right. And that's what we found as success. That's what happened at the ranch, ultimately. And
yes.
That's where part of the model is coming from is, hey, look, when someone has a right, and that right is being stood upon, and then thousands of people show up, that right can be protected and maintained. And so we've created this system where you don't have to be alone. You never know. I mean, like the parent, they never, thought in any way that this would ever happen to them. And there's another. I could give you many stories, success stories about, this network working. For example, another lady, she had an 11-year-old daughter, and that daughter got cancer, and basically she's going through this very extreme chemotherapy process, and the mother felt, and she had good cause, she had actual medical cause with doctors warning her that the chemo was killing her daughter. So she refused treatment and seek for other types of treatment, and CPS told her, used the FBI and actually took the daughter away from her, kept her away for 9 months. But we got involved probably around 8-month period, and we began to go and protest at the prosecutor's houses, the CPS's office, CPS houses. I mean, we started putting a ton of pressure on them, shining a ton of light across the country on this thing through our network. And within 3 weeks, the court had an emergency hearing and dismissed the case and returned the daughter back to her mother.
So it's all about numbers and pressure and the irate minority is what it's coming down to.
Well, that appears to be what is working for now. But either way, we have to unite as a people. We have to unite, even if it comes down to physical defense, which I hope it doesn't. But reality expresses the truth that it probably will. And we have to be united.
How many people would you say are part of this network?
We have almost 37,000 people now.
37,000 people nationwide? Do you have people in every state?
We have people in every state. Some states are more organized than others. Obviously, the Northwest, Utah, Florida, Montana, California. Those are all organized states, and we're always looking for someone who's willing to take the start that we have in their state and become leaders and make better.
So nice and clear and slow. If people want to join the People's Rights Network and be part of your network here, how would it doesn't cost anything, right?
No, there's no cost.
Raul told me you're not in it to make money. You're in it to keep people free and protected from the government.
Yeah, we haven't charged, we don't charge anything, no fee. We haven't even collected donations, which we probably will have to do because the network gets bigger and bigger, and there is a cost to it.
Yeah, but this might be something worthy. So how would someone join this network?
So the best, there's two ways. One is to text right to 80123. So you put 80123 in like the phone number, and then you would text the word right, and it'll respond back and say, "Hey, thank you for I think it says something like, thank you for joining People's Rights. Please fill out this form." And then you click that and you fill it out, and then you're in. Now you're connected. The other way is to go to peoplesrights.org. There's a bunch of information there. It's a bunch of, and you could join there. There's videos there. There is, some education tools like defining your rights, how to maintain rights. There's some preparation tools there. There's some resources.
Real quick, Ammon, real quick, because I got about 75 people watching. You text the word RIGHT, right, to the number 80. Finish it.
1, 2, 3. It's right. It's plural. RIGHT.
So you're gonna text the word rights, RIGHT, to the number.
Yes.
What's the number?
Right. Is that a text plural? It's plural. Right.
So you text the word RIGHTS, rights, to the number
80123.
80123, or you go to peoplesrights.org, sign up that way, and read all the literature and information about how to join the People's Rights Network. And if you're in trouble, they have the capability of showing up en masse and getting you out of sticky situations with bureaucrats, government, hospitals, etc. Is that a good synopsis?
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, it could be used for many other things. I mean, if there was a need for, some protection in your community because there's some thugs or there's some rioters or there's some, it's for many different reasons. But we all know that this bureaucratic control across this country is growing and growing, and we at some point are going to have to continue actually to defend ourselves against it.
Absolutely. Now, this North Idaho Exposed YouTube channel, is that you?
No, that's actually one of the area assistants in Northern Idaho. He's very involved, and he has seen the success of People's Rights Network, so he's promoted it. So he's definitely a friend, but it is not. It's not us.
But you do show up in his videos frequently, right?
Yeah, that's the one thing. Because we're a network and not necessarily, if you will, an organization or a hierarchy. I mean, people, all kinds of organizations could use us and use these tools. We encourage it.
Sure. Now, a lot of what we do is First Amendment auditing. Now, traffic stops, you wouldn't use this for a traffic stop now, right? It should be used for like a most. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, it's like anything else that bandwidth is important, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, if there was an officer that was being aggressive and began to escalate it, then yeah, this might be a time to use that. But we do have to be careful with drawing people together for every little thing. And
right.
People might look as like calling war.
Right. Exactly. So, use the system responsibly. It's a great idea, man. And I always think to myself, how can I get all these people in this neighborhood if something were to happen? How can we get them to team up? And outside of going door to door, there's really no way, or using Facebook or something like that. But again,
yeah, and then
go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, like, Facebook just wipes us, People's Rights, and anybody who was associated or linked to it in any way, they wiped us off their platform completely, 100%.
Yeah, they're garbage.
They did this because they are literally of the same people that People's Rights would actually defend against.
Now, can I ask you some stuff about all the stuff you went through, and then we can come back to the People's Rights Network again?
Sure.
I'm a big fan of yours. And again, Raul, I know you're there, man. And you said you were in Bunkerville also. If I could quickly summarize, your dad's name is Cliven Bundy. Your family's been in the ranching industry since the mid 1860s or the mid 1800s. Is that right? And the land over there in Nevada where your family settled was just open land, public land, right?
Yeah, so when we came into the area in the mid 1800s, no one was there. In fact, people had said that the area was uninhabitable, meaning they didn't believe people could even live there during that time. We came in there. We began to carve a living out of the valley there. We diverted water from the Virgin River. We went up on the mountains and I found small springs. Began to make water systems for animals to graze and stuff up there. And again, no one was there. No one even wanted to be there.
Right.
And we did the proper procedures with the state of Nevada of deeding our rights. We have 13 deeds with the state of Nevada. And ultimately what happens is the feds come along later, 70 years later, and they began to try to take control of this land and say it was theirs and not ours. They began to basically say that it wasn't even in the jurisdiction of the state of Nevada, that it belonged to them. And we battled with them for a couple decades, or actually, a couple generations, really. And ultimately, it came to a head in 1993, and my dad finally just said, look, we're not going to deal with you at all. What you're doing is unconstitutional, it's immoral, and it's not right, and we own these deeds. So he went for ransom. And 20 years, he just totally ignored the federal government until they amounted an army of 213 armed federal agents, snipers on the hill.
Can I stop you real quick?
Sure.
What was going on with inside of those 20 years? Were they just constantly sending stuff to your house through the mail, or threats, or calls, or?
There was some legal proceedings that they did in their own courts, their own little administrative courts, to try to justify them. But ultimately, they actually left us pretty much alone because they didn't know what to do with my dad. He had no contractual obligation. He wouldn't sign any contract or agency, so they had no contractual, law to hold against him or obligation to hold against him. And he just pretty much ignored them, and they just didn't know what to do with them.
And when you say you had the deed rights, that means logistically, that means you have a contract on a piece of paper saying you have the right to graze on certain parts of the land, right?
Yeah, so the state of Nevada did it a certain way. Back then, Nevada was a fairly new state, and there was no way you could graze. There's no way to graze cattle without water.
Yes.
So the way the state of Nevada deeded the grazing right was they linked it to the water right, and they called it a livestock watering right. They basically said, okay, you own this water, right, and that gives you the right to graze around that water, okay? And we have 13 of these livestock grazing water rights, clearly tied to the state of Nevada. Most of these titles were established the first year that the state of Nevada even offered title registration on livestock watering rights, and that was in 1890.
How long are those good for? Forever?
Yeah, as long as you prove up on them, meaning use them, they're yours as long as you want to, and you can sell them. Pass them on to your. They're real property. They're no different than owning the title to your vehicle or the title to your home or the title to your.
Right. So if I'm understanding this right, is the land was uninhabitable. Your family made it inhabitable, not only inhabitable, but profitable. You carved a living for generations. Your family did hard work, sweat, because ranching is not easy. And the government messed up and actually gave you rights to property, which is something the government hates for anyone to have now. So they were in a conundrum with your dad because he already had the rights, he already built the infrastructure, he already put in the work. It was his rights, and they didn't like it, and they didn't want cows there anymore. And they made up a bunch of stuff about bird sanctuaries and other stuff to do a huge land grab.
Yeah, this has been going all over the West. You know, if you can't use that's a very good synopsis. That's basically what happened. And you know, in the 1800s and even first into 18 or 1950s, even around there, kind of the federal government, state government, their whole goal and whole purpose was to dispose of the land and the resources into the people's hands. It's not until they become basically, this idea of socialism, communism,
Yep.
basically begins to deteriorate our government, that they now are trying to actually keep people from using it. A lot of it has to do with this extreme environmentalism as well. They want to make people so that they are not using the land and resources for a lot of different reasons. You cannot survive and live if you cannot use the natural resources that God has given us. And if someone else has control of those, you have to ask their permission to use them, which means you can't even live. You can't even feed yourself and your family
Without someone else's permission. Without someone else's permission.
So that's been the degradation of our government. But I will say, during when my family first went there, and for probably close to 100 years after that, the government was pretty friendly. They were promoting and trying to get people out there to use the land and the resources. That's why they give titles and encourage. That's why you have the Homesteading Act.
Right.
You can actually go out and claim land and it become your private property, titled and deeded to you. That's all my family did. But now they want to come back on their property and say it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to my family. And my dad just said, hell no.
How is your dad still around?
Oh yeah, my dad works like he's a 40-year-old man. He's 74 years old. He's a hard-working rancher, and we still run around 600 headed cows on that dry Mojave Desert.
Your dad didn't have to do any time, right?
Yeah, my dad did time right along with us.
What? Oh, you did some time too?
What's that?
You went in too? You went to jail?
Yeah, they falsely accused us, right? And then they incarcerated us.
What for? What was the charge?
Well, they charged us with a conspiracy to assault federal officers. And the minimum sentences was 106 years. And they kept us in federal detention centers for 2 years before we even got to trial.
Wow. You ended up winning though, right?
Yeah, we beat them in trial, on one trial with, acquittal on all charges. Jury found us not guilty, on all charges.
Oh yeah, but I'm sorry, Ammon, I'm confused here because I thought that the jury that found you not guilty was because of the Hammond or the Malheur Wildlife Refuge incident.
Yeah, so when they arrested us for both incidents.
Oh, what's the first incident?
So,
the threatening officers. Okay.
That was the Hammond. Both of them held similar charges. They were, completely false charges, but that's what they were going after. And so we went through the trial in Oregon first. We were found not guilty on all charges, and then they shipped us down to Nevada. And it took, like I said, we were incarcerated for almost 2 years before we went to trial down there. And then the government was, withholding exculpatory evidence to the point that, it was a gross violation because we were exposing them for all the things that they've been doing. And finally, the judge, after realizing that he was going to get hung for this, but she did come clean, she finally dismissed the case with prejudice. The government appealed that, and it went to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit unanimously agreed but it was a gross violation upon our families, and we finally, went home after 2 years.
What was the gross violation now? Just incarcerating you in the first place?
No, that was part of it, but the gross violations were the things that they did at the ranch, but they were trying to cover up.
Like killing your cows from the helicopters and
snipers on the hills, and they tried to hide over 3,800 files of evidence in our case. We tried not to, tried to hide it from us and keep it from us, and even keep it from the court.
That's what's called Brady material, right?
That's correct. It was, and they were, like I said, there was over 3,800 files that they were holding.
So
they tried to completely cover up that the FBI was even at the ranch. Period. They literally tried to wipe the whole thing, like the FBI HRT team wasn't even there when they had a whole team that was there. It was amazing. They literally tried to change history.
And the videos are all over YouTube. That's the best part, is they do it on camera and they still lie.
Yeah, well, they even said in the indictment, they even said that my mother made it up. Even we had pictures, and she said that we disseminated false information all over the internet and laid up that there were snipers on the hill.
I saw a video of it yesterday.
I know you can't, but it doesn't matter, because what they do is they get a judge who goes along with them, and then the jury never gets to see the videos or the evidence because they keep it out.
Wow, and it's that's similar. Go ahead.
That's what they call our day in court. They call that our day in court.
Yeah, right. Our day at the extortion center is more like it, and that sounds like Waco, where the FBI said we didn't fire one shot, even though they're on video shooting people as they're running out of the burning building. Like the government lives in an alternative universe, and they need to be slapped back into place. And that's what I see you doing in your videos. So can I ask you about the Malheur Ranch thing? And I got specific questions, and I might cut you off here and there. What gave you the idea to go to the Malheur Wildlife Refuge and occupy it? Is that the right term?
Sure.
Okay.
So, the Ammon family was another ranching family that basically the same thing had been happening to them, except even grosser violations to their families. They had a ranch in Oregon. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is under the Department of Interior, just like the Bureau of Land Management that we were dealing with, was basically trying to take their ranch.
Yeah.
And the reason why, because the Hammond's Ranch is like a peninsula inside the wildlife refuge, the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge.
It's surrounded on three sides. The Hammond's Ranch was surrounded on three sides by this Malheur Wildlife Refuge, which most of that property was even seized by the government, pretty much, right? All of it. Okay.
All of it was owned by ranchers that was deeded to family ranchers, and now all of it, which is 187,000 acres, they stole from the private ranchers through many different methods. Some they purchased, some they condemned, some they confiscated. They even went as far as using eminent domain. And they were trying to do the same thing with the Hammond.
Didn't they also, let me interrupt you, I'm sorry, sir. Didn't they also block the roadway to their house and also build a fence around their water supply on their property?
That's correct.
Okay.
And when the Hammond tried to remove it or even stop them, they charged them with destruction of property and assaulting a federal officer. And
right.
They were literally trying to move the fence from their water that they owned and then feed it with the state of Oregon.
And the judge couldn't do anything to the feds, he said, because if he subpoenas the feds, they just don't show up.
Yeah, they don't even care.
And the reason the ranchers named the Hammonds are in court or in trouble at all is because they set prescribed burn fires, which prescribed burn fires are a common thing in ranching, I guess, because it helps the land rejuvenate itself, right?
Yeah, in Oregon, you get that, thick grass, it grows good, and you have to burn it or graze it all off in order to get it stopped the following year. So almost every year they prescribe burn.
So this is a common practice.
It's been a common practice. Even the Native Americans did it before white man came out.
Okay, so
it's been done.
So the Hammonds did a prescribed burn, and a little bit of the fire went on to quote unquote federal property, and they accidentally burnt 140 acres combined between two fires by accident. And somehow the government thought that the Hammonds should be charged as terrorists for doing that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, arsenal terrorists. But again, remember, the goal here was to put them in such duress that they would have to, abandon or sell their land to the U.S. government.
Right.
So they began to prosecute them with these charges to put them in duress. And part of the result of this prosecution is the Bureau of Land Management got what's called a first right. I can't remember the right terminology. I apologize. But basically, they forced the Hammond to sign a document that said, in order to, get a lighter sentence, they forced them to sign a document that said that if they ever sell their property or abandon it, that they would have to sell it or give it to the Bureau of Land Management.
Right. They have the right to first purchase, or the right of sale.
First right of refusal.
Right of refusal. Yeah, exactly. You have to offer the property to us first. And if from the little bit of research I did yesterday, did they not do the same thing to your father after a civil trial?
They tried to, and my dad wouldn't deal with them, but it, wasn't deal with them at all. They haven't spent over $1 million trying to defend themselves in this, federal kangaroo court. And ultimately, even though there was no damage done to any property, nothing, it burned grass.
Right.
It was mostly their own grass. Even the judge admitted, had to admit, and the court had to admit, that the prescribed burn actually improved the property.
Absolutely.
They charged them as arsenal terrorists under the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Death Penalty Act. And that was the act that was passed after the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah.
So they charged them just like they were Timothy McVeigh for burning grass. And they had a minimum of a 5-year sentence.
How?
But the judge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me tell this real quick. They did prescribe burns. They were charged with terrorist arson. They could have faced a death penalty. Is that right?
Well, the minimum sentence was 5 years, and the maximum sentence was death. Yeah.
So they could have faced death, and some stupid jury convicted them for prescribed burns. The judge said this mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years is ridiculous for what these men did. So he gave one guy 3 months. He gave the other Hammond a year. They did their time. They went home. Well, the prosecutors and government weren't satisfied with that, so they went and arrested them again, and they're still in jail, serving out the rest of their 5-year term because it's mandatory, quote unquote. Is that right?
Close. You're right, except the term. What happened was during that time, right before they went back to prison, is when we got involved. We began to throw such a big fit. We were trying to get the local and state, people to actually stand up against the federal government because of this tremendous abuse against the Hammonds. They wouldn't, and so we finally said, look, we can't just allow this to just be swept under the rug. People need to know about this. And that's when, basically we decided to go into the refuge and occupy it. We knew that it was the reason in which most of the abuse was happening, and we felt that it would get national attention. And it did. It got international attention. And ultimately what happened was, when it comes to the Hammonds, yes, we went, a lot of stuff happened to us, but the Hammonds ultimately were pardoned by President Trump, and they went home.
Oh, Trump pardoned them?
Yeah, President Trump pardoned them.
When was this?
This was in 2018.
Now, how did he even find out?
Because we threw such a big fit.
That's, I did not know about that. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful.
It's the right people to, you know, and finally what happened was the state should have stepped in, you know. The local representative should have stepped in. That's what we were trying to get him to do. And finally I had to go all the way to the President of the United States, and he's going like, whoa, wait a minute, this is completely wrong. And so he pardoned them.
So now I have questions about the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. It was between 8 and 12 people. Is that about right?
That were there?
That originally went there.
Well, originally, yeah. It ended up being, you know, hundreds of people, but originally, yeah, there was probably, you know, less than 15.
Less than 15 people. You went to the refuge, and the keys to the structures were all there. You didn't have to break anything to get in. Isn't that right?
No, we didn't break anything. We actually went in a building. There was a key box there. It was open. We got the keys, and we opened the building, so we began to live there.
And you basically just started camping there.
Yeah, I mean, they had because it was also a fire station, so they had a big kitchen and bunk area, and, you know, we just began to live there and call people there, and we began to use the facilities to actually benefit the people rather than to be destructive to them.
Now, the thing that I watched was they kept repeating that people on your side were saying, don't fire unless fired upon, which to me means self-defense, but they take that and turn it into, you guys are ready to shoot people. And they basically did the Ron Paul on you. Anybody who's a freedom-loving constitutionalist, the media tries to frame them as domestic terrorists.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do, you know. That's their new key in terms, and that's how they're going to justify or continue to justify their living. The war on drugs is starting to wear thin on the American people.
That's right.
To see through it. So they need a new ploy, and the new ploy is domestic terrorism.
Yeah. Domestic terrorism, sovereign citizens, conspiracy theorists, whatever buzzword the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL can come up with next, pretty much. So
all these agencies believe it, like somehow, oh, it must be true, when it could be further from the truth. So we see history repeat itself.
Well, we got to be honest. The most people that wear the badge lack critical thinking ability.
I know, and it's unfortunate because they, you know, are such a powerful force.
Yeah.
And they're controlled by the bureaucrats.
Yep.
And some of them don't think past, you know, their paycheck they get once a week.
And their pension, exactly. So when you went to the wildlife refuge, if I'm understanding this correct, everything you did there was lawful. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely lawful.
But the whole country looked at you guys as a militia group, terrorist organization who took over a federal facility.
So that's what the media tried to cast it out. And then, of course, when they arrested us, you know, we were eventually, 10 months later, able to get in front of the jury. We went through an 8-week trial, and the prosecutors tried to, you know, basically do their little controlling of the court and manipulating the jury. But we fought pretty hard, and we had to take some risks, such as, you know, I took the stand for 3.5 days, cross-examination and all of that. We did that because we felt like the jury wasn't going to get the truth unless we did it. And the jury saw through it. They're like, wait a minute. What these men and women did were correct, was right, was patriotic, and was legal.
Now, how is it legal? I'm sure people want to know, how is it legal, lawful to go to a federal wildlife refuge, occupy it? How is that legal?
Okay, so first of all, you got to go back, and I'll be brief. I think I could sum this up.
I'm in no hurry, man. I'm enjoying this.
Okay. Well, first of all, the refuge was illegally claimed. What happened was, in 1908, Roosevelt said that he had the power to create reservations. Well, they were supposed to be for Indian reservations, but he said, well, I'm going to create a wildlife reservation.
Yeah, bird sanctuary.
Unconstitutional, okay? And all he did was, he said, I'm only going to take the little land around the water. There was one called the Malheur Lake. Anyway, it was and he said, I'm only going to take around the water, and that way me and my buddies can go bird hunting when we want to. And that's literally how this thing started.
Wow.
Okay? But then what happened was there ended up being some bureaucracy there, because now they got to take care of that reservation, right? That reservation. So you get some bureaucrats there. Well, then what happens is they begin to prey upon the ranchers that are around them, and also there was some economic, during the Depression, and some of the ranchers actually had to leave their ranches because of economic trials. And what the bureaucrats there that were, taking care of the quote-unquote reservation, they went to Congress, and they wanted permission from Congress to purchase this land. And Congress says, well, you don't have constitutional right to do that. And so Congress told them no, and told them no then again. And then finally they said, well, how about if we just take it to basically so that we can take possession of it, and then we can dispose of it back to the people. So the purpose of a redisposal. And Congress says, well, federal government doesn't have a role in disposing land, so therefore you can take it for the purpose of disposing it back to the people. That was the only reason. Well, guess what? They never did that. They kept it for themselves. They never even offered us for redisposal. And then they began to use that authority incorrectly to take more ranches, until they ended up with 187,000 acres. And it was never approved by Congress, completely unconstitutional, and damaging and destructive to the people in that area. And so that was number one. That was legal number one.
Okay.
Legal number one. Okay. We argued that. And the court tried to not let us argue that. And the prosecutors tried to. The only way I was able to get it is through what was called the state of mind testimony, where basically I had to say, this is what I believe. That was the only way I could get it in front of it, but the jury believed it. So the second is there's laws that's called adverse possession law.
Adverse possession.
Yeah, and it's in every state. Basically what happens is if someone abandons a piece of property and another person goes in to take it over, like use it, most states it's 5 years, some states it's 7. Federal laws even are a little different. But if they go in there and openly take that land and they hold it within 5 or 7 years, depending on the state, then they can actually claim the land and title it with the state, and it becomes theirs. Called adverse possession.
So
and
let me ask you about that again. Let's make that clear. If does it have to be public land?
No.
So if there's land and it's not being used, so the Malheur Wildlife Refuge was not being used?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be used or not. You can actually adversely, it's called adverse possession. You can actually adversely go and take a piece of property, right? Because let's say, for example, this is probably a better example, real life. This happens all the time. Let's say your neighbor builds a piece of a fence that might be a couple feet inside your property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know it, he knows it, or even if you don't know it and he knows it, doesn't matter. Let's say there's a dispute. If you don't force him to move your fence, ultimately that property becomes his. Within 5 years.
So what are you saying? The wildlife refuge, if you were to sit there for a certain amount of time, the refuge becomes yours?
Well, it becomes, we claimed it as what we call the Harney County Resource Center. So county public property. And those ranches, we were actually going through the process. And mostly, it was an exercise mostly.
Yeah.
Don't get us wrong. But we were actually going through the process of actually adjudicating these ranches back to the ranchers. And we actually had the county reporter that was willing to help us do it. Because it was legal what we were doing. Absolutely legal. And the county reporter said, if you just go through the legal process, then I will go through my legal process to title it back to the people.
So who's in control of that refuge now?
Well, see, then what happened is they used the FBI. They came in and raided the people and drove us off of it. And the Fed took over again, which is completely right along the lines of adverse possession. But what they couldn't claim is that what we were doing was illegal. It was 100% legal.
That is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Raul.
All we were going to do is reverse adverse possession upon them. Because all they've done is come into the West and other places, but mostly the West, and they have used adverse possession laws to take over 51% of the Western United States. And they just basically come in and said, hey, this property, we are claiming it. We are going to use it for our benefit, and we are going to defend it. And they've done it long enough that the people have accepted it, which basically is natural adverse possession law. And it is legal in the state and in the fed, in the U.S. law. The problem is it is actually, for them to do it, for the federal government to do it, is unconstitutional.
But a private person could go on that land and defend it with force, and if they can defend it long enough, it becomes theirs?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And actually, probably what is going to happen in order for us to actually, because they're controlling now in the West, so you're talking about Colorado Rockies and West, they're controlling 51% of the land mass in the Western United States, and 72% of the subsurface mineral rights. So basically, they're saying that all that belongs to the U.S. government and that the people can't use it. And if they are going to use it, they have to have permission from the U.S. government and they have to pay the U.S. government. So that actually forces people into undue obedience, where they have to have the state. Because like Nevada, 89% of Nevada is federally controlled. That means only 11% of the state landmass and even less of the mineral rights belongs to the people of the state of Nevada. So you can't have a state. That's why the state of Nevada has to depend on gambling and all of that. Because you can't have a state that doesn't have access to its natural resources and expect that state to be free.
That's 100% correct. Yeah, it's our state, but you come and control 90% of it. It's not our state. It's like property tax. If I have to pay you rent on my property every year, it's not my property.
That's exactly right.
So,
and so what's going to happen, as we expand or as we need the resources, we're just going to have to take, and that's going to cause more conflict. Because honestly, that's exactly what they did. At one time, it was all disposed of to the people.
Mm-hmm.
So the government came back and took it, and they basically used these natural adverse possession laws to do it.
Right on. All right, we're running up against the hour. What else you got? Let's talk about that People's Freedom Network. Right. Again, you will text the People's.
Hey, John.
Go ahead.
John, I want to stand as a witness to what happened at the Bunkerville standoff, and I was watching what was happening, looking at all the videos that were being posted of the Bureau of Land Management abuse against the Bundy family and the Bundy Ranch, and we were seeing, as spectators, we were seeing what they were doing. They were we saw a video of the Bureau of Land Management agent taking down an older woman who happens to be Ammon's aunt.
From behind.
And,
from behind.
Yeah, from behind. They took her down to the ground, and she, this lady was going through cancer treatment, and she was there trying to defend, her family. And this agent took her down. And then, the other thing that I saw was how the Bureau of Land Management went and said, you guys, because people were being drawn to the family, to the Bundy Ranch to defend them. And so people started showing up there and with protest signs, and they said, well, if you want to protest, you're going to protest in this area that we have designated the
First Amendment zone.
Yeah. And we saw that, and they had cordoned off the area, and it was into the desert where nobody could see them. And I was watching that, going like, well, what the heck is this?
Yeah, that lasted like 2 days, right?
Yeah. And then, a lot of people started seeing that, and then, that led to the Bunkerville standoff where, the cows were corralled.
Yep.
And they were taken by the Bureau of Land Management, and they were going to auction them off, and they were going to ship them out of the state. And they had over 200 armed agents there pointing their guns to the Bundy family and to all the other people that were supporting them. And I have to make something clear. The Bundy family was down there in the wash on their horses, wanting to go get their cows, but they were completely unarmed. And all the federal agents, over 200 of them, had guns pointed at them and at the rest of the people that were there, even on the bridge on I-90 or I-15. And so it was a sight to behold. I think I was
watching it like a hawk, man.
Right. Yeah. And so what we saw ultimately was the Bureau of Land Management having to stand down completely and leave so that the Bundy family could get their cows, because they had so many neighbors there supporting that family so that they could get their cows, and no blood was shed. That was an incredible thing. Anything could have set off a firestorm of bullets onto the people, and it would have been a major massacre.
I don't think the BLM would have got through that. One.
Yeah. I'm grateful that not.
That's why they stood down. They were outnumbered.
Absolutely, they were outnumbered, but we were outnumbered with their guns. I mean, we were going to get massacred over there, and so was the Bundy family and all the supporters that were there. It was unreal. But this is the power of the numbers. This is why People's Rights Network was born. Just recently, in the last 6 months, and I'll let Ammon clarify that. But because I got in with the state of Florida just a few months ago. When I was living in Florida. Now I'm back in Utah. But anyways, so this is what's happened. Is we need numbers. We need people to stand with each other, because it is the duty of free people to defend their neighbors' rights.
And you would text the word rights, RIGHTS, to 80123, or go to peoplesrights.org and sign up. Were you armed at Bunkerville, Raul?
Yeah, I watched it happen. I was there on the bridge. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
You're in the bridge above it all?
Yeah. The bridge was completely filled with cars. It was backed up to miles on end, behind that bridge on I-15. And there was, quite a few people up on the bridge, and then quite a few supporters down in the wash with the Bundy family.
How many days did that go on?
Well, the stand-up was just one day.
What about leading up to it?
Well, Ammon,
yeah, they started, they locked down the ranch, and it went, that went on, and began to kill cattle and all that for 7 days. It took them 10 days prior to that to build their military-like base. But the operation actually only went for 7 days, and they planned on going for 7 weeks.
Oh, wow.
again, showing the power of the people when they respond.
And Ammon, the final day where they finally backed down, you went up to the gate and told the law enforcement guy either kill us or leave, right?
Well, I basically demanded that they leave, and said that, yeah, we're not going anywhere. We're going to stay right here, and, demanded that they leave. And it was really cool because finally, the sheriff came down, a sheriff deputy, and he actually did it, anyway, he came down and he saw what was happening, he understood what was happening, and he basically demanded that the feds leave, and we gave them an hour to leave, and they left in an hour. It was amazing. They literally gathered up everything, all the people with vehicles, and they left in 107 vehicles within an hour.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's awesome, and that's how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unity of the people, understanding what was right and wrong, and coming together, determined to correct it.
Ammon, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask if your father had to pay the $400,000 from the civil suit.
No, absolutely.
They're still saying he owes it, though. He's just saying you're not getting it, right?
Well, yeah, it ends up being like into the millions now, they say that, but they totally give up. They're not even, they just know that they lost, at least at this point,
So on paper they're saying he owes money, but in reality they're like, even though it's on paper, going and trying to collect is going to be a nightmare, so it's pointless.
Well, it's a lie. Like when the whole thing started, they said he owed like $5,000 worth of each, right?
I
think it was $8,000, and that went to several $1 million.
Because of what? Assessing taxes and stuff?
Yeah, taxes and
penalties,
interest and penalties and all that.
And the numbers they pull out of thin air.
Yeah, and it's just a game, and it's just so that they can tell the people that Cliven Bundy owes millions of dollars worth of taxes. And most people, a lot of people believe it, but it's just a game. Like, this is all literally about controlling the natural resources so that they can control the people.
Right on. Now, as far as this People's Rights Network, can you guys check the stats after this live and see if anything happened? How does that work?
After this right now, I'm talking.
Yeah. Is there any way to see what kind of traction this did or anything like that?
Let me see. I can certainly see.
Again, let me tell my audience real quick. Text the word rights, RIGHTS, to the number 80123. Again, text RIGHTS to the number 80123. This is the peoplesrights.org also. And what it is, it's like a freedom force. If you're in some serious trouble, they're trying to take your kid, you're being harassed nonstop, you call the people there and they possibly dispatch people out to help you, or just try to find the best solution for what your issue is. Is that?
Yeah, you're not alone. That's the big thing. You're not alone.
You're not alone. So yeah, if you're stopped somewhere and it's dark and then they bring 4 and 5 backup units and you're by yourself and you're a woman or something, or who knows, something to where you feel like your life's in danger, or they're trying to take your kid or something serious, you're not alone. You could text a number or call and people will start to mobilize and come and help you. And there's plenty of situations where it's worked.
Yes, it's been amazing. I don't know how many has joined just over our conversation, but I know that about 100 people have joined, and I don't know if it's during the last few hours or last few minutes or the last 24 hours. But,
okay.
We've got about 100, little over 100 people that have joined in the last 24 hours. It is growing, and we are in every state.
Yes.
But remember, it's about local people uniting and actually defending each other. It's not about some hierarchy with an organizational head in some state, sending down orders. That's not what this is about. This is about independence, about your community, about loving your neighbor, and caring for them enough to defend their rights.
And if you can get enough numbers, Ammon and Raul, possibly this could become America's third party.
It could absolutely. All the states are divided up into areas that comprise maybe 2-3 counties, and so every area has an area assistant, and that area assistant contact, and there could be more than one area assistant, but there could be 5 or 6, and all the information of those area assistants becomes known to every participant, every person in the network, and that is their contact person. If they need help, they can contact their area assistant. They have their phone number and their email address, and they can say, hey, you know what, I'm in trouble. They're coming to, the contact tracers were here, and they want to take my family. They want to quarantine them. Could you help me out? And the area assistant would be able to text or email all the people in that area and summon people to your aid or help. So that's how it works. It's very effective. It's just a model or a copy of what happened with the Bunkerville standoff, only using the electronic technology and means to be able to contact people instantly.
Yes. So again, everybody, on the phone with me right now is Ammon Bundy from the Bunkerville standoff, the Hammond arrest, and Raul Hevia, who was also there, and their friends, and they've created something called the People's Rights Network. Go to peoplesrightsnetwork.org. Also text the word RIGHTS to the number 80123. These guys are patriots. They're not getting paid for this now. They might ask for donations, but who cares? If you're gonna blow money on cigarettes or beer or whatever it is, you could throw $5 here and there to help a cause like this. And he said they said they have about 37,000 people right now, and if you can get that to 500,000, maybe we could start a third party and get these stupid Republicans and Democrats who are two wings of the same bird flying in the same tyrannical direction. Gentlemen, take a few minutes, say one last thing, and let's wrap this up. And I really appreciate you more than you know, and feel free to call me anytime you want to talk about anything.
Thank you, John. I just want to add something. This network has been in existence for about 6 or 7 months now, and we have not collected or asked for 1 cent from anybody. So far we haven't had that need. But it does cost money to get these texts out. Every character costs money. So, but I don't know if we will ever come to that point, and we probably will. But right now, in 7 months, we haven't asked for 1 cent from anybody. We haven't taken a donation even. So
it's all right, man. If the situation arises, I'll help you get donations too. If it's a good cause, why not? There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, I agree.
Ammon, last words, Mr. Bundy.
Well, I just encourage you to go to peoplesrights.org, sign up, or text rights 80123. Join with your neighbor. Don't be found alone. There's no reason to. And start actually doing something, because if we do not become a people that act, that openly act, then we will become a people that will be acted upon. And we do not want to be those people. We do not want to be the people that basically are acted upon. We want to be acting, and this is a way to do it. It's peaceful. It is looking after your neighbor. It's based on correct principles. And if you have any other questions, just go to peoplesrights.org and check it out.
We advocate for peaceful assembly, just to make that clarification. It's what we advocate for.
Yes.
Peaceful assembly.
We advocate for First Amendment, peaceable assembly, free press, our rights guaranteed under the Bill of Rights and Constitution. The overwhelming majority of us are peaceful people, freedom-loving, peaceful people that if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. But if you tread on us, just like the snake on the flag, we're going to bite you in the calf, and it's going to hurt. And we might inject some poison.
Absolutely.
So stay on the phone, guys. I'm going to end the live stream. One last time, everyone, thank you so much for joining the live stream. Thank you, Ammon. Thank you, Raul. Go watch American Standoff. And I believe there's another. Oh, I posted a video yesterday about Ammon and his story. Raul, bro, thank you so much for contacting me. I usually don't call people back, but you seem legitimate. Ammon, sir, you're an American hero and a patriot, and I really appreciate you coming on the phone with me. One last time, text the word RIGHT, rights, to the number 80123. Let's get involved in this People's Rights Network, Freedom Force, and you'll never be alone. All right, I'm going to end this live stream. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a good day. See you. Bye. All right, gentlemen.